Hi, welcome back to Community Focus here on Channel 6 TV. Glad you could join us tonight. We're going to talk about politics. It's getting into the political season now. It's Fancy Farm coming up just a few weeks from now. And of course, people are out talking. If you turn in any of the cable news networks, it's usually all they're talking about, whether it's a presidential race or whether it's some other race. Well, right here in the state of Kentucky, we've got several races coming up, and they're coming up very soon, sooner than you think. November is not that far away, and some of them have been working for months and months, maybe a year or so, to get to where they are now, but we haven't heard a whole lot about them because there's just nobody's paying attention yet. But now they're gearing up. It's gearing up time. It's time they're starting to, it's like they're blossoming. They're coming out of their cocoon. And I've got Chad McCoy here with you. Chad's the local attorney here in Bardstown, and he's my resident Republican that I call on occasion. We chat every now and then. So, Chad, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And as I mentioned to you, we've got people just starting to pay attention now. I mean, the people have been out there for quite some time,
right,
raising money and developing issues, but nobody's really paying real close attention.
And I think, you know, with the national race, we've kind of got that this year coming up where the national race is obviously going on, even though it probably shouldn't be, but it is. And I think that has taken a lot of the focus off the local race.
It does. It sort of eclipsed a little bit.
Yeah. And if you think back to our last couple of local races, it's always been, well, you're for Obama, you know, or I'm not Obama. And so even that national influence has still been there.
Well, and that's what I told somebody recently. I said something about the governor's race, and I said, well, they talk about the issues. I said, here's what I think the issues are going to be. McConnell versus Obama. Even though it's Bevin versus Conway, it's people are still thinking ideologically. And in the local races, issues are not usually not as important.
I agree, and you know, all politics is local, and especially local politics.
Right.
And I don't think our issues really have anything to do with that national race, but I think you hit the nail on the head.
Well, yeah, you get into the national race, you're talking immigration, you're talking health care. I mean, you still got health care in Kentucky. You got Connect,
right? And
obviously, it's a debate as to whether Kentucky, how they're going to participate in the Obamacare aspect of it. But and both of them have different ideas.
Right. And I think you have to acknowledge, though, Kentucky Connect's done great. I mean, we are the poster child for the pro-Obamacare world out there. You know, we've got a great system. It seems to be working. Curious to see what happens now that we're coming around second and third renewals on the rates.
And on top of that, at some point, we're going to be paying a little more than the federal government. I mean, the federal government is going to, it's like they've always done before, like grants. So if they put dangle a great grant out there, once you get hooked on it, then they start weaning you off and you start paying yourself.
And I think that'll be a real issue. And you see Bevin is already starting to make that part of his platform. I'm seeing a lot of stuff from him about he wants to get us off of Kentucky Connect and throw us back into the federal pool.
And at some point, that may become more of a discussion. But there's other issues out there right now that there's a big difference in between Conway. People say, well, you know, politicians are all alike. Well, in this case, I don't think they're a whole lot alike. You got the retirement system, which they're not. Neither one of them, I don't think, is breaking out and making any rash statements.
Right. In fact, to be honest with you, don't know that I can tell you what either one of them are going to say.
Well, that's sort of it. I agree with you. I've watched both of them, and neither one of them have really, like I said, they've been very vague statements.
It's the classic, we're going to fix it.
We're going to fix it. Trust me. Then you got a right to work. Obviously, now there is a big difference on right to work.
And that's going to be an interesting one, you know, especially here locally. We've got a lot of unions, and it will be interesting to see. I looked at the map this morning, you know, when you can see the right to work and the forced to join the union, whatever they were going to call the other side of it. There's always that battle for labeling. But it goes all the way through a lot of the factory-heavy states, including us. So I don't know how that's going to play out. Both the guys are from Louisville. You know, I think if Conway were from Eastern Kentucky, I think he might have a little more, be able to use that better. But it'll be interesting to watch that.
But what you just said is going to be historic, though. You think about we've only had one governor ever from the state from Louisville, and that was Lawrence Weatherby back in the 50s. Wow. And he told everybody he's from Anchorage, and they didn't know that was part of Louisville. So we're going to have a Louisville governor this year.
No matter what.
Never had a Louisville governor before.
Interesting.
And it's going to be interesting just how that's going to play out.
And I was talking to Mr. White off the air earlier. You know, I didn't grow up in Louisville. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. Lived in Lexington a long time. And I'm not sure Louisville understands its relationship with the rest of the state. Growing up, we just sort of figured they didn't know about us or care about us,
right.
and quite frankly, we didn't know about them or care about them either.
You only went there when you had to.
That's right. And so I think it will be interesting to see how either of the candidates are able to relate in Eastern Kentucky, in Western Kentucky, and being from Louisville.
Exactly right. So what's it going to take to... Now, usually, historically, in the last many years, the Democrats have had the advantage. What's it going to take for Matt Bevin to win this race?
From my perspective, he's got to do something to unify the Republican Party. And I think the problem he's going to have is this national election going on. Even though he's going to be out there trying to get on point with his issues, he's got, 14 people running nationally behind him. Right. That's going to cause a lot of problems for him. I don't like what he's starting off with. His campaign heading is pro-life, pro-family, pro-gun. Well, what does that say? I'm divisive. Right, I'm going to pick 3 issues to try to...
It's automatically going to turn off every Democrat in the state. Not necessarily, but...
And it's going to turn off some of us Republicans as well. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to go to the Democrat side, but he's already not getting a lot of that. Let's all get together and fix things. He's being a divisive person, not a problem.
Well, that's the key to it, and I see this a lot of times with Democrats and Republicans. Both sides do it, is they appeal to their base, which is fine in the primary. But once you get out of that primary, you've got to get somebody from the other side to join you, or you're in trouble.
Get to the center and get there.
You've got to get to the center, and a Republican has to be attractive to Democrats, and a Democrat has to be attractive to Republicans.
Right. And I think when you start off with pro-life, pro-family, pro-gun, you're not trying to be in this.
But it's the state of Kentucky that way, though. A lot of people are registered Democrat in the state of Kentucky, but that are pro-life, pro-family, pro-gun.
But you already got them.
Yeah, that's
you already got them. I always say that to my Republican friends. We don't need to worry about the religious right. They're not going to vote Democrat.
Well,
now let's get out there and get the independent vote, the center vote, some of those more conservative Democrats. Because I think if he could push an economic plan, that's where he's got to go. And I'm afraid, Conway's had a lot more publicity. He's been Attorney General now for a long time. Seems to have done an okay job in that position.
Hadn't messed up anyway.
Well, yeah, right.
That's the key to it. He hadn't messed up.
And so, I feel like his name recognition is going to be so much greater throughout the state. I think Bevin's got a long road in front of him. Really.
And obviously, there's the big issue with McConnell last year, but that was in a primary, and that's to be expected. I mean, anytime you're up against in a primary, that's the dangers, is you're going to alienate people in your own party because you've got to win. You got to just do what it takes to win.
But maybe that's a smart thing.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of people don't like McConnell, and
that may be true.
I can see that playing both ways for him.
So again, you see the Bevin, like I said, right to work is a big issue, and there's other issues out there as well. But what do you see as are there any breakout issues that people are even paying attention to, or is it just going to be personalities? Who do you trust more, or how are people going to vote in November?
Great question, and I hate to be so cynical, but I feel like so many folks don't pay attention to the issues. It is the personality that you get from the 15-second soundbite. It is where you get your mind, where they're camped with. And I think that's why we get those commercials. Yeah. Oh, he's an Obama guy. Oh, he's a McConnell guy. Yeah. Just so that whatever triggers for us, that's where we go with. I would like to see a better debate on the Kentucky Connect. That's going to be important to the state, whether people are focusing on it or not. And again, locally, like you said, what are we going to do about the retirement system? There's a whole lot of folks. Every county in Eastern Kentucky, who's the biggest employer? The school system.
School system.
Right. Yeah. Those folks have a legitimate, real need and interest for somebody to fix.
And you got the education system. I mean, there are people screaming, let's go to charter schools. You got people screaming, let's fix the public school system. Some people say it's not fixable, or it's doomed.
Right.
So education could be a big issue.
It really could. And there's, on all of these issues, I think there's room for somebody to pull ahead, but unfortunately, I just don't see them playing it the way
somebody's got to be bold. Yeah, somebody's got to come out and make a bold statement. Well, the key is, if a poll comes out tomorrow, one of them's 20 points down, it's time to make a bold statement.
Well, that's right. But at that point, it's a Hail Mary. You're following. You're not leading. You're just doing something.
Well, I mentioned earlier before we went on the air, you know, I use Donald Trump as an example, but Donald Trump makes bold statements. And whether you like Donald Trump or whether you don't like Donald Trump, that helps him in the polls and it helps him in name recognition. And people say, you know, I don't care much for the guy. He's got a funny hairdo, but the man doesn't mind saying what's on his mind.
Well, that's right. And he just said before I came in here, he's going to win the Latino vote.
And he might, who knows? But you got him, you got Bernie Sanders on the other side, and both of them coming from behind the, like in the horse races, from behind, and it doesn't hurt them to say something a little outrageous in order to get their name out there, and it's working.
It is working, but you know, I wonder about Trump. What's he thinking here? That man had a lot of business interests that are being...
Well, he says he's so rich he doesn't need the money anyway.
Right. and maybe that's true, but he's losing it.
Exactly. So going back to the local races, you think there's any of that fallout will fall over into the governor's race, or is that just basically people are separating those two, or is it just getting eclipsed to the point nobody's even paying attention?
I think it's going to be the first and the last there. I think there are going to be issues from the two primaries that are going to fall back onto us. What they are, I don't know that we know.
Yeah.
You know, right now, immigration for the Republicans is becoming an issue.
Yeah.
Are we going to see that come up in the governor's race? We could and should. We have a huge illegal immigrant.
We do.
It's not a problem, but the reality is it's part of our society. It's part of our economic base here. So I could see that coming up. At the same time, unfortunately, there's a lot of apathetic people, and I'm not sure they are really thinking it through yet.
Well, that may be the case, but like I said, there's a lot of issues up. I mean, money is always an issue. Taxation, like I mentioned, the retirement system, somebody's got to pay for it. So taxation they've been talking for years about a new tax code. I mean, I don't see it happening because nobody's bold enough to stand up and say, I want to do this.
Right. And then as soon as you do, you're going to hear from the various sides, well, that's regressive, that's hurting this group or that group. And then we're right back to where we are, this crazy tax code that protects all the little different interests. It would be great in theory. I think it's a wonderful thing to talk about at the college level. I'm not sure it practically could be done.
I know as an attorney, obviously, you see some issues that most of us don't see, whether it's in tort reform or something of that nature. But is there anything going on was there anything actually going on in Frankfurt that's making a difference right now?
Not right this second.
Not today. They're on break.
You know, tort reform is a big one, and this is probably the biggest issue where you'll find me on the Democrat side of the world, and you might say instantly, well, you're a hypocrite because it's on your side.
Yeah.
But it's not, and I have a battle with all my Republican friends. If Republicans thought about it, they would not want tort reform. You know, they would protect all the amendments, including the 7th Amendment, which is your right to a jury trial, just as much as they want to protect that 2nd Amendment in your gun. And I'm a gun owner. I got plenty of guns. I'm all for it. But it's one of those where I feel like Frankfurt is at least holding off the dogs, keeping things there in a way that really does protect the local folks, even if they don't realize it. For example, the nursing home. There was we have literally, we're 48th or 49th or 50th in the country on how our nursing homes do get graded. Now we have great ones here locally, but as a state, there are some really bad ones out there. And so why would we want to protect those people and not protect the poor little old man or little old woman that's been stuck in a nursing home because they have nowhere else to go? So adding hurdles to be able to sue to help them out is, to me, just doesn't make any sense. But that's Frankfurt, so far so good. They've been holding that off, but it's a fight.
We'll go down the scale just a little bit. I mean, we talk about the governor's race because that's what we know about.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's other races out there. There's auditor, treasurer. There's an agriculture commissioner,
Secretary of State.
But we don't talk about them a whole lot because most people don't even know who's running. I mean, I can tell you pretty much who's running in some of the races, but honestly, I don't know who's running in all of them.
Right. And I looked today because I knew I'd be on your show, and I'm like, never heard of that person. And you know, those, God love them, I'm not sure that it makes a whole lot of difference, at least in my life. And I'm somebody, Kenny, that Secretary of State I use every day.
Yeah.
You know, we file corporations, we do all that sort of stuff.
But it's not a political. It's really not a political
That's
office.
right. I agree. It's a functional thing.
And I've argued this, as a matter of fact, on this show several times, that I just really wish we could go to some sort of nonpartisan in that area, even the local races, because again, till you get to the governor, Congress, president's area, partisanship really doesn't play a whole big role.
And it shouldn't. The government has functional jobs it has to do. And I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. When I fill out the form and hand you my $9, I want my driver's license, and it shouldn't be political.
I'm going to give you a Republican driver's license. You go drive on the right side of the road, and you drive on the left side of the road. I like it. But again, there's all these issues that creep into Kentucky that we, like just recently with the Supreme Court on the same-sex marriage issue.
Yeah.
Will that even play a role in Kentucky? Because, people are talking about it, but more on the local level, at the county judge, county clerk level. But I haven't even heard it get into the governor's race at all yet.
Not yet, but it's going to.
Yeah.
And I'll give Steve Brashear some credit here. He I thought has done a great job handling that for the state. His letter that sent out to the clerks around the country or around the state was spot on, saying, hey, you may not like this. That's okay. You don't have to like it. But you do have a job to do. Now, let's go do our job. Let's not get crazy here. Today he said, we got two clerks that are refusing to issue. Some people are calling for a special session. He just said, let me take a deep breath. Just let's calm down. Let's let this get worked through. I think it's going to be okay. We can sue them in the courts, make them do their job. So, but I think it will come up, especially when, and we're going to start to see this in other states, people are going to try to pass laws to prevent same-sex marriage in a way that doesn't violate what the Supreme Court said.
Yeah.
And so now
put some hurdles in there.
Yeah, exactly. And once that starts happening, you can see the easy question to Bevin and Conway.
Yeah.
Okay, if the legislature gives you this bill, how are you going to veto it or not?
That's true.
And I think it'll pop up.
And one of them might accidentally answer the question. Who knows?
Exactly.
So we talked about the governor's race, and again, we'll probably come back on in the fall and recap this again when the race heats up a little bit. But just briefly, I know it's a little far out. Are you going to handicap the presidential race at all on the Republican side yet? Is anybody breaking out of the pack?
You know what? Jeb Bush seems to be breaking out of the pack, and I don't know if that is the Bush name is so familiar.
Yeah. Or despite it.
Or despite it, exactly. He's here's what I say about the Republican Party. And Kenny, when I took a class in college a long time ago, there's this principle of democracy, and I can't remember the name of it, but basically, if you like candidate A, but your fallback would be candidate Z, and I like candidate B, and my fallback would be Z, and Gary likes candidate C, and his fallback would be Z, but then there's 40% that like E. That 40% is going to vote. You're going to vote for your guy, I'm going to vote for my guy, I'm going to vote for he's going to vote for his guy. That guy that none of us like ends up winning.
Well,
even though our fallback guy,
I believe the biggest example would be Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln said when he ran, he wanted to be everybody's second choice. Right. And that was his slogan, I want to be everybody's second choice. So whenever everybody got in a fight and couldn't agree on anybody, Abraham Lincoln.
and that works great when there's 3 people in the race. But when there's 14, now all of a sudden, who are we going to...
Exactly.
And you know how this works. Those first 2 or 3 primary winners, that's where all the media goes.
All the money
goes. And my fear is we're going to miss somebody who might be a reasonable human being, might actually have good ideas and do a decent job for the country.
And a lot of times that happens because simply and I'm a big anti-money person when it comes to the campaigns. I've been believing in campaign finance reform for years, and a lot of people don't like that, but I really do think that we do miss out on a lot of good people simply because they don't have the money to find out who they are.
And in the primaries, where, like you said, where do they go? They run to their base. And so you end up getting more extreme viewpoints coming out that are never going to...
Got your Donald Trump story before we get out of here.
All right, just real quick. I was a big Donald Trump fan in high school. And The Art of the Deal was his book. And I always wanted to be a corporate lawyer and be in the corporate world. That was what I wanted to do. And my girlfriend's mother literally called Donald Trump. And he answered the phone. He said, "Lady, do you understand that I never answer the phone in my life?" He said, "To be honest with you, I haven't been in this office in a year." He said, "I was having people walking by and the phone rang, so I picked it up." So she told him the story, and he sent me for high school graduation an autographed copy of The Art of the Deal.
All right. Well, that is, you want to hold on to that one. Oh, yeah. I got a Gatewood Galbraith book, so it's not quite the same thing, but I still treasure it. Well, we talked a little bit about the Republican primary the Republican race right now for governor and state offices, and also got into presidential races a little bit this year. We're going to do a little bit more this fall as things heat up a little bit and it gets a little more closer. It gets closer to Iowa and New Hampshire for the president. It gets closer to November for us here in the state of Kentucky for what's going on in the Democratic and the Republican races in the statewide offices, which will be coming up in November. So we're not going to leave you uninformed. We're going to educate, inform, maybe entertain you just a little bit, but we hope you enjoy it. So we're going to talk a lot about it. Fancy Farm coming up in a few weeks, so that's usually about the time they kick a few things off there between there and Labor Day. So right after that, we'll be back and we'll do a whole lot more. And I guess our motto is we're just going to pay attention, and we're going to pay attention and hopefully put them on the spot. And if I can get a candidate or two in here, we'll do that as well. So, Chad, I appreciate you being here. Chad McCoy here with us today. Chad, always good to discuss politics with, and we're going to bring you back in here in just a few months, and we'll do this all over again. So stick around. A lot more to come here on Community Focus. I'm Kenny Fogle. We'll be right back.